The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 47.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas Enherho, filling in for Father Fett this week, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Today, we're continuing to follow Ahsoka and Rex through the Rebels series with Season 2's Episode 10, The Future of the Force, and Episode 18, Shroud of Darkness. And together again with me tonight on the panel are Mike Creevy. Hi, Mike.
It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back. You've been out for a while, so good to have you. And Andrew Hermus.
What's up, guys? It's good to be back as well.
Awesome. So these two episodes give us a deeper glimpse into the development of young Jedi with some unique looks at the dark take the Sith have over this process. What do you guys think about these two episodes?
These episodes were great. I've always liked episodes that include the Inquisitors. First of all, they're some of the best designed villains, I think, or characters in general in Rebels. They just look really cool and very menacing. And I love the action. I mean, there are some of the more action-packed episodes. You know, even though Ahsoka, especially in the first episode, isn't featured prominently, it advances her story a lot. Yeah, and seeing the Jedi Temple when we get to it was pretty cool.
Right.
That whole that's one of my favorite episodes in general, I think. Yeah, it was. These two episodes are some of the best Rebels have to offer.
Yeah, I agree. I was laughing though because I rewatched them again today. I watched them a few weeks ago, and I just put my first bullet point was stealing babies and me right now, like question mark exclamation point. So it was funny because and for anyone who's not aware, we had our second child a couple weeks ago at the time of this recording, Renata, so our second little girl, and so I'm extra primed for this protective kind of
right.
So the first episode especially, I was like, oh yeah, we gotta do the right thing. A very very pro-life message.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think it's interesting to see the dichotomy here between this and knowing that this same kind of thing happened with the Jedi, but
right.
How different it must have been. Not just showing up and taking the baby, but like showing up and explaining everything that was going to happen, and
Yeah, and when we'll see later on too. Like I was thinking, not till just tonight, but and I don't think it comes up in the episodes, but Ahsoka's background, with her childhood, I'm a little sketchy on it. I forget some of the details, but being hesitant to trust Plo Koon when he showed up because of that, fear of being taken away, and then here these two are, on a mission to do actually that, Right. So it was just a very interesting contrast.
And it got me thinking about what it would look like in a Jedi community where everyone knows that there are these things that are Jedi, are these people that are Jedi, like, sort of a religious force, but also sort of a political force.
Yeah.
And if, we in the church, we have this moment where people have to go through discernment. They have to go to seminary. They make a choice to become priests. Whereas this is, hey, you're force sensitive. You won the lottery.
Right.
That's it. You don't have a choice in this. You're coming with us. We're going to take you and we have to train you. Period. The end. So It's interesting to see, to think about what the implications of that might have been, generally speaking, too, like how people felt about the Jedi in general. So we'll pick up there. We'll go from there. Like the opening scene of the Future of the Force is that we rarely see babies in Star Wars universe. We've seen the baby Yoda and the child from the Mandalorian. But very few other situations in which we've actually seen the children. Like even with Luke and Leia, there wasn't an on-screen presence more than just a few moments in the movie. So we don't see much of that happen. So when we start this episode with a mom with a baby, the baby's going to be important to it. Or in this case, a grandma with a baby, the baby's going to be important. And we're on a ship that's kind of a beat up, junky kind of traveler ship. And there's this, I like that they put the symbol, whatever that weird pattern was on the blanket. It was very different color than everything else that was in the scene. And so that made it really stand out. And so you're like, what is this? What is this pattern that's going on? And then, of course, they're being captured by a Star Destroyer. So very similar to the first, episode 4. And in that, the Inquisitors come on the ship, and then they approach this mom for her baby, or this grandmother for her baby, as we find out later. How do you guys feel about this scene?
It's menacing.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of, anticipation of it. And I think they did a really good job of that throughout Rebels with, I've only seen one time through. So just probably in the last year was my first introduction to it, because it was coming out when my wife and I were in state college, and, I could have had time to watch it, but there were access issues and I didn't have Disney, whatever was on XD and all that. So, I really blasted through it once Disney Plus landed. And, I really found these guys just really well done in terms of, in a sense, it's predictable that they're going to show up, but, they really keep you on the edge of your seat with them. And I'm trusting we'll probably talk about them more through these episodes, because I keep having questions, too, about them. Like, it brings up all these kind of cool things, but these two in particular, one thing I think is particularly funny is the Seventh Sisters voiced by Sarah Michelle Gellar, so... It's funny because, we've seen these 2 episodes. There's some interaction with her and Kanan, of course, who's Freddie Prinze Jr. So they had to have some fun. The real life husband and wife team probably had some fun with with some of the other scenes.
Some of the lines don't fit necessarily with the characters, but they do. Once you know who's voicing the characters, like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yep.
So that's I thought the one of the really interesting things here too was like they walk all the way through the whole ship before they then turn around and imply that they're going to do something with all of the people on the ship,
Oh yeah, we forgot. Let me just throw this thing down the hallway. Okay.
So
whenever you see a hallway in any Star Wars property, there's going to be trouble.
Exactly. Yeah, or the ship just being sucked into the larger ship. There's something's going down here. And we cut from that to Kanan and Ezra, who are kind of this next generation of the Jedi, and they are trying to figure out what to do about the Sith, but they're being approached now by Ahsoka, who is looking for help. So they're still in the middle of trying to find a base for the rebels. They're still in the middle of all of their stuff that they're doing to try and escape the Inquisitors. And here comes Ahsoka. Hey, I've been monitoring transmissions from Mustafar and haven't found anything else out about the Sith Lord, but now I have these 2 coordinates and we got to go figure something out about this. And that's how she approaches Kanan, and she's saying that the information about Vader is eluding her. And I love that they've kind of started down this path with her. Like when we first see her interacting with Vader, she is kind of pushing it to the side. And then with these 2 episodes, we see that she's still not trusting her feelings about the things that are happening. And we see it really get pushed all the way to the end in these episodes, which I thought was a really good image of it. And then I like, of course, the family meetings of this where Kanan turns around and says, Ezra's already been briefed. Just pops opens the door open and Ezra falls in. Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about this series is that you really do feel like they're a family, and we've talked about that a couple of times in the other episodes. But it really does come through over and over again how much of a family they are. Yeah. And then I thought it was interesting too that Ahsoka here says, "Oh, and also take Zeb with you because he's been pretty good against the Inquisitors before."
I don't know how excited he is either necessarily.
Right.
Moments throughout where he goes at it, with certainly with the I keep getting the numbers mixed up. That's why I wrote down the fifth brother. Because we don't see all of them either. That's the other thing that throws me off. It's like,
yeah. Which one is this now?
Zeb was doing a whole lot of running. Not a lot of fighting.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. There's that whole scene where he's like, "I'm a rebel," and then he lists off all the things that he's doing. It's like, well, at least I'm good at this one. That was a pretty good scene too. And so then Ahsoka flies her A-wing, which I thought was kind of an interesting nod back to the evolution of the A-wings, to the ship where we saw the baby being taken. And I love the way the grandma refers to them, the red blades. That's such a cool, like, it's very, very pithy, but also very, Sith. It identifies as Sith pretty clearly.
Like, no Jedi's going to be like, who?
Right, wait,
like,
which one?
Who are these people?
That doesn't limit it down for us enough. Well, and then which, that brings up a whole nother series of questions for me. Like, there's always two Sith, right? But then they do have all of these Force-sensitive people working with them that they're not calling Sith. They're just calling them, in this case, Inquisitors. And they're obviously trying to recruit now, too. So I love that my kids did not get what was going on with this until the second baby. But once they got to the second baby, they were like, oh, it's because they're Force sensitive, right? And I was like, that's probably pretty much exactly what's going on here. So we get, then from there we go back to the Ghost, and we have Chopper and Zeb, who I think make a great team, going off on their own to try and find the ships. Which is just like the absolute snark and the absolute apathy, and you put them together and you got a great team. His implication that he's you'll know when I find the ships, and he's got the two thermal detonators in his hand for it. When they get up to the ship too, and like Chopper's like, you're like basically just like annoyed that they're not going to blow him up. He's like, right, after we take the baby out, it's like. No, and Chopper's just, he has he's a very, very cheeky droid, which is fantastic. Those are my favorites, like all the droids that go through the cheeky.
I forget. I looked a long time ago. He's voiced by Dave Filoni, isn't he? I think, or at least for some.
Well, I'm not sure. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
I forget. I thought I saw it somewhere, at least in some cases.
I could see that. Dave Filoni would be good for that position because he kind of knows what's going on. And then we get so you kind of come to figure out that this planet is an Ithorian planet. So if you guys know the hammer-headed people, those are the Ithorians. And as Ezra and Kanan are walking through this area, we get to see kind of a look at what life inside of an apartment building in Star Wars would be like, and it's like, oh, okay. It's kind of disappointing how much it makes sense.
I'm like, I think I've been in that apartment.
I know, right? There's nothing unexpected about this at all.
Galaxy not so far away,
right?
When they go in there.
Yeah, I thought it's great, and on the one hand that there's just really not that much difference. I mean, we've kind of optimized living facilities with apartments, right? So there's not really much new to do with it. But then at the same time, it's kind of disappointing that there's not like something really cool going on inside of these super futuristic apartments. And they run into this Ithorian woman who says that I think she refers to them as Red Blades too. Did you guys catch that?
I think so. Yeah.
I think she uses the same thing. And she refers to them as Red Blades too, in that they came and they had come to take her child also. And we see draped on the couch the same patterned blanket. So I'm really wondering where the patterned blanket comes in to all of this. Yeah. Did you guys? Yeah. I
don't think I noticed that.
Yeah. Oh, I searched for it. I tried to find like what is this patterned blanket? It's like when you deliver a child and a Force user, they give you this blanket.
Yeah.
I don't know, or that it was like some kind of religious organization or something. I don't know, but I couldn't figure out where. I haven't found anything yet about where this pattern comes from. So, but she did have a blanket on her bed that was the same. Was the same thing. And then we get to the scene where Zeb's like walking down the street. He's told that he needs to go find the baby because the mom was able to get the baby out with a droid before the Inquisitors came in. And he's walking down the street. He's like complaining about all the things he has to do, and now he's a baby hunter. And I don't know. I thought this whole section, like once you tied all this together, the idea of them hunting for babies was really interesting because and I don't know, I mean, maybe you guys, is there more in the Clone Wars? Because I have not watched the entirety of the Clone Wars, and I know there's a little bit of Ahsoka's backstory in there, but is there more in the Clone Wars about how the younglings come to be?
I'm not sure about that. Maybe Andrew, I don't know if you know more about that. I just know that there's the episode Children of the Force, where basically like Dooku was doing the same thing. It's kind of like the same episode, but in Clone Wars, which Ahsoka just mentions in passing at some point, that they had done this back in the Clone Wars. But I forgot, actually, I went back and rewatched that because I forgot that episode culminates on Mustafar. So I think I'd missed that the first time around, that, Anakin has a little, prelude experience on Mustafar where he's far more noble, and I couldn't help but thinking about that. And I know that's not the topic for tonight, but just seeing him kind of was interesting because it's like this, like, we know where he's headed. We know the whole thing with him and the younglings, in the temple, not too much later after that. But here he is, he's like, he's doing exactly, what like Kanan and Ezra and them are doing in this episode of Rebels. But then he goes the road that these Sith do, obviously, which was just really interesting, to kind of see it that way. When I hadn't seen the Rebels episode yet when I saw the Clone Wars one years ago. So that was neat to kind of put those together. But I'm not sure more broadly. I don't remember a lot, about other episodes or how the Jedi do that.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I don't remember too many episodes that focused on the children, but there was an episode early in Clone Wars where Ahsoka had to she was like protecting a group of younglings and taking them to see Yoda to construct their lightsabers. Right. Yeah, so she does have. I mean, Ahsoka herself does have a history with the younglings, and yeah, there's at least that episode that I'm remembering where she was trying to save them. But yeah, as a whole, like you said, Mike, I don't think it's touched upon too much in Clone Wars either.
Well, you see, we see how Qui-Gon goes about it, in the field when it's not really their main mission in Episode 1.
Right. I was thinking about that. That's the
my
only
model.
real example we have of it. But that's such a strange one because it's like, obviously you would want your child out of slavery, right? There's not even a question that that's going to be the result of that whole situation. But like, what about me? If like somebody came up and knocked on my door and said, hey, your 3-year-old, he's Force sensitive and we need to take him.
Sure, go.
Go ahead, here you go. Right?
He hates carrots. No, like what? Like you're giving him information. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. There's not a whole lot of reason for Anakin to stay on Tatooine.
That's the thing that, like, I was thinking about that with this too, where and I know there must be more of a religious context to it, and that's why I was really intrigued by this like pattern on the blanket thing. Like, is it something that you get approached by someone when you have the baby and they tell you all about the Force and say, hey, your child's Force sensitive. We're going to leave them with you to raise for this long. But then you need to consider having the Jedi come. And then the turn of that, too, is I wonder if these kids start manifesting Force powers. And it's kind of like one of those things where, as a parent, you're like, I'm not really sure how to deal with this. I am not equipped to deal with this situation in any way, shape, or form. And nothing about that's going to change. And it's going to get worse. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't know, there's just lots of little interesting situations there and then if there's like an easing off period, like your parents come visit you for a few years until you choose the path for yourself, kind of thing. So I don't know, it just opened up a whole can of worms for me, like watching this episode and seeing how cute the Ithorian baby was when Zeb reaches in to get him. It's like, oh, he's like a teddy bear, man. So yeah.
he's like, am I holding this thing right side up?
I know. Oh, it was a great scene too. It was so good. So at any rate, that goes south really quickly because Zeb's like, no, says to the droid, no, you can't come with me. You need to go be a distraction. And as soon as the droid turns around the corner, it gets thrown back around the corner by the Inquisitors looking through the basket, trying to find the baby. And then Zeb's in trouble because now he's got 2 Force users after him, and he's trying to carry a baby and keep it alive. And so he rushes off to try and hide, manages to find an apartment building to hide in, and then tells Kanan and Ezra where he's going to be, and they have to come and get him. But the seventh sister and the fifth brother figure out where he is and manage to track him down. And I could not get out of my head. This is the following scene is the three of them trying to figure out how to get the baby to be quiet. And all I could think of was 3 Men and a Baby.
3 Men and a Baby.
That's it. It was so well done because that's exactly what it was.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. So, absolutely.
And then I love like Kanan's like, you're an empath to Ezra. You know, you like this is your field, man. You're supposed to be skilled at this.
You're good at connecting. Yeah.
You're good at connecting with things. Get in there and do it.
Well, it's so funny too because like this is one area where I was thinking, obviously with our baby who's she's like a month old today, and it's so funny because it's like you guys know it's like completely different when it's your kid. When it's somebody else's kid, like if it's like a cousin or something, they have their baby, like you want to hold them, I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah,
right. Like, it's no, like I love babies, but I'm like, nah, I don't want that. I'm not going to mess anything up. It's or the baby starts crying. I'm like, yeah, somebody else here.
Yeah, go back. That didn't work.
So with all three of them in that situation, it was just so funny and like absolutely like yes, that's it. Like that's how it goes.
Well, then you got to wonder too, like for in the Star Wars universe with so many different species, there might be some things that are fine by one species that are not okay by another. My those teeth are really sharp, and my skin is not it's not strong enough to withstand you chewing on it. So no, that's not going to work. But yeah, that's just watching them try and like, and none of them are putting their hands on it at all. They're all trying to stay very hands off and keep it from crying. It's like that doesn't work. That's just not that's not how things are going down. So that was a great scene, just watching the three of them trying to figure that out. But then because of that, the Inquisitors, who really have no qualms about any of this, just start stabbing their lightsabers through the floor to hit whatever they can. Doesn't matter at this point. Just zapping it.
That's what they do.
There were a lot of lightsabers piercing through like walls and ceilings in these episodes.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. Oh yeah, right. Then because they cut the hole in the apartment above them to jump out and everything. Lots of property damage going on in these few episodes, which comes
but also,
home to
like,
roost.
It doesn't seem like anybody else lives in this building.
No, I know. It's like there's nobody there, right?
Like
it's like a completely empty apartment building.
Right. Yeah,
it's the middle of the day, right?
Fortunate, yeah.
It would have been nice to have at least seen a pet in there somewhere, like somebody's dog barking in the background while they're going through their apartment. So that was I thought that was really interesting, like seeing how they escape, and then they used the classic crawling through the ventilator shaft to get out of the situation too. But man, it was pretty amazing watching Kanan take on one of the Inquisitors and then Zeb go toe to toe with the other, and like how did the lightsaber not come into play?
There were a few moments like that where like one of them would like force pull, hold on to one of them, and the other one kicks him. And I'm like, stab him. Like, it's like, I don't want you to. I'm just saying that's how you would do it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite combat YouTubers. His thing is if you can kick someone, you can slash them. It's kind of a waste of time. Like all this screen time spent kicking people. It's like, why did you not use your blade? So that's I watching some of the battle. These are actually pretty well thought out battles for the most part. The thing that freaks me out is those lightsabers that the Inquisitors use, because they've got the spinning blades on them. And man, I would not, as a fencer, as a person who did fencing when I was in college, I would not want to face someone who had this just like, basically weed whacker that could turn on at will to fling around at me. That'd be scary.
It's funny you should say that, because I was just doing a lot of yard work the last few days, and I was like, you know what? Like that would really come in handy out there on some of my edging.
Lightsaber weed whacker. And so we see here that Kanan gets out by Zeb grabbing him, which I thought was hilarious. Like Zeb's like, nope, we're out here, and just grabs him and hauls him out of the whole thing. And as they're running down the hallway, he shoots out the window and says, just jump. And Zeb jumps, and they land on a speeder, and the response there is classic. Oh, a speeder. Good thinking. And Kanan's like, I didn't know it was going to be here. I just kind of hoped for it. But then the response from the Ithorian driver, man, like Yeah, no big deal. Two guys just fell in my car, and I'll drive them. Sure.
It's almost like he's like, well, it's Star Wars, you know?
Right. I wonder if he's like advanced Uber, like just happens to, like Jedi Uber, just happens to be there when you need it. And then I thought it was cool because the Inquisitors jump out on a car also, and I'm not really sure how this happens. They jump out on a car and they pull a driver out of the car, and then the car that they end up on doesn't look like it has like an open driving area at all.
Right.
So as they're driving through, it was really interesting. But I recognized the car that they were on from an old Micro Machines set I had when I was a kid. I was hey, that's a Micro Machines car that they threw into this thing. So that was pretty cool. And then they managed to chase scene. They get back to the dock where their ship is. They're trying to get to the ship, and the Inquisitors are close on their heels. And then the door opens up, and now Ahsoka pops out and is here to kind of save the day, which is phenomenal. And then this is the first time I think we're introduced to her white lightsabers, because
I think so.
I believe the last time we saw her, she had the blue ones, and now this is the first time where we see the white ones.
And I won't spoil it for anybody, because I've just recently, largely because of the influence of one Father Fett, shout out. I was in a real kind of reading slog. And I've got a bunch of really cool things going that I'm reading, but for whatever reason, I just, it's taken forever to get through some of them. And I just couldn't find something that was just that real, enjoyment read. And I don't know what was wrong with me. It just hit me. I was like, dude, you're on a Star Wars podcast. Like, there's all this stuff like you haven't read. When's the last time you read? I was like, oh, right. So I read the Ahsoka novel, that takes place like a year after the end of season 7. And what's interesting is I take it that they had enough of an idea of where it was gonna go, when it was canceled and everything. So there's a little bit of stuff like that they slip in where it's like not exactly, what we ended up seeing in the end, but it's close enough that you can kind of see where they were going. And without spoiling anything, they do explore in that novel where her lightsabers came from. And cool. I hadn't heard that, but I guess I didn't really wonder about it, or their color and that kind of stuff. But it's cool. It's a really unexpected kind of little neat feature near the end of the book. So I definitely recommend that if anyone wants to check that out. It's a pretty quick read.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That sounds good. And that's what I thought. I thought it was really neat seeing her like show up with these white lightsabers, and you're like, oh yeah that's that's cool. And then the fighting is great. But I thought it was really interesting. This is something that I'm attaching to, and my kids asked about it too, so I figured I'd bring it up. On Disney Plus, they have put these episodes in, but they have also darkened out some of the scenes. So I don't know if you guys noticed that, but in the middle of the lightsaber fight, it would get dimmer.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that actually.
And that's because of the concern about epileptic seizures around lighting issues.
Oh, wow.
And so there's a certain amount of moving light that can be on the screen before they have to dim the screen. And I'll tell you, the lightsaber fights are the biggest culprit that you have in the Star Wars universe, especially in the cartoons.
Sure.
But oh my gosh, Pokemon. I cannot watch Pokemon with my kids because of this. Because it's like every time something happens, there's the fight just goes the fight goes gray. And you almost can't even see the fight because it's so gray for so long because the skills are all like epileptic light based.
Oh my gosh.
If you're watching and you get annoyed by that and you wonder what it's for, that's what it is. It's part of the kind of concessions that everyone's making around trying to protect kids who have a tendency towards light-induced, any kind of neural issues that are light-induced. So
that's how I felt with all the Exegol sequences in episode 9. I'm like, do we really need? I mean, like, I know lightning is his thing, but like, come on, dude. Like,
this is enough. Seriously.
And the timing's always perfect. It's like the lightning waits until he's done saying what he needs to say.
Right, he has to say exactly the right thing. Yeah.
Oh, it's all show. It's all show.
That would be a great YouTube video for somebody to do, where like the lightning keeps going at the wrong time.
Yeah,
like,
saying something dramatic.
What he's trying to say. Picking his nose or something. Yeah, like he just completely.
Say that again. Say that again. What was that? Couldn't hear you for the thunder, right? And so there's I thought it was a fantastic fight. She holds her own against these two Inquisitors. Obviously has them outclassed for the fight, but is not trying to harm them at all. She's just trying to protect the retreating members of the crew. And then this great moment where she just shuts her lightsabers off and like starts meditating, and the seventh sister attacks her, and she grabs her lightsaber and shuts it off, pulls it out of her hand, and then throws her against the wall. I'm like, whoa. That was amazing.
I made a note about that, with the significance of it. I don't know if it was just a sheer like muscling her out kind of like that was awesome thing, or if there was something more to that. I wasn't totally clear on that, but it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's an intense move. And you know, I mean, it's obviously a Jedi thing. Like, she's obviously, you know, really in tune with the Force at that point. But yeah,
this is a real random thing, but I just, for some reason, and I haven't seen it in probably 20 years or whatever, but I think it was like Lethal Weapon 4 when like Jet Li like reaches out quick and like takes the whole like chamber apart like from Mel Gibson's like pistol as he's holding it on him. It kind of was a little bit like that. I'm just kind of like, okay, I didn't see that coming.
Right. I didn't know you could do that. Like, wow. Yeah.
Like, okay, I must not get that close to Ahsoka, you know.
Yeah. Well, and then I thought it was really funny because you can tell how the way it's written is so good, because when the seventh sister gets up and all of her stormtrooper force is coming in from outside, she has to gloat, right? Because she was just not just defeated, but completely trounced, like embarrassed beyond all belief, because Ahsoka had put her lightsabers away, was meditating, and you know, it's one of those moments where the master has truly shown up and said, "Nope, we're done. You are not winning this fight, just so you know." And then so she has to say, "Oh, you know, now we've won because all the stormtroopers are coming in, and there's no way she could stand up against all those." And which I'm thinking, wow, this is an older Ahsoka who's already stood up against all those clones, you know, back in the day when they were clones and were in their prime. So yeah, I don't think your stormtroopers mean that much, really, honestly.
Well, it's a little like her own version of Rex's thing. You know, you guys, I think the episode last week talking about that, like, you're going to need to send all of them.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what I mean, those two, out of everybody, those two are definitely prepped for whatever the Empire can throw at them. And so then Ahsoka manages to jump onto the ghost, and as it's flying away, which one's the bigger one and which one's the little one? I always get them confused. Is it the ghost is the big one, the Phantom's the little one, right?
Is the little one,
yes.
I think.
The Phantom's the little one. There you go. Yeah. She jumps on the Phantom, not the ghost. She jumps on the Phantom as it's leaving, which is a pretty intense scene in and of itself, because it's pretty far out there already. And when they are in the bay of the Phantom as they're flying off, she turns around to Kanan and tells him that basically that he's just going to have to restart the Jedi Order. And it's like this throwaway line at the end of the episode, and you're like, what? Wait a minute, seriously? And Kanan's like all in. Like there's not even a second thought about it. Kanan's like, yeah, that's what we have to do, right? Let's take him back and start training him. It's just like, whoa, that's intense. So I think it shows a lot of growth. And that's one of the things that I really like about these characters, because from the beginning, from the last few episodes that we've watched of this season, Kanan was really resistant to being a part of anything bigger than himself. He didn't want, he wanted everything to be about their family. And now for him to just flat accept, no, there's really nothing else to do now but to go and train these kids.
Well, I feel like, and especially resisting anything that would really pull him back into specifically that whole Jedi world.
Right.
Because of, I mean, it's like, can you blame him? You know, just absolutely, really just the epitome of trauma. You know, that's another thing I know you guys were talking about before too. Like basically like PTSD, anyone, like, geez, I mean, like, what do you think Kanan is going around all these years with? And so that's a real bold, I think, character move on his part, you know, that he's really, and of course we see that a little bit more here in this next episode, his commitment to that, you know, that he's not, there's almost like like with Ahsoka, like she's kind of embraced, which is funny, she's kind of embraced this whole, like, I'm not a Jedi thing. And, you know, of course, as we're watching her, like, come on, like, you, but she has this real, like, deference, you know, like she you know, she affirms him as a Jedi, you know, and really kind of is trying to, I think, support him in that, just like she's supporting, you know, Ezra in just sort of leadership and in those kinds of things. So yeah, I just love all these things about how her character plays out in Rebels, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the first thing that Kanan did to show that he's all about this, at least keeping the Jedi Order alive with whatever hope there is out there, is when he tells Ezra to climb to the vent with the baby.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he could have like had Ezra just tag along with him and, you know, fight these guys, but he was willing to die just to save the baby and his friends. So yeah, I think that was the first sign of maturity on Kanan's part, and I think him recognizing what the stakes were.
Yeah, I think you see a much different character now, and it's, you know, we've jumped forward a lot from where we were before, but you see a much different character now 10 episodes into the season than you did at the end of the 4th episode in the season. So he's gone through a lot of development, and it's good because there's still a lot more to do too. That's the other thing that's really interesting about this character, is that he's not completely gone through his cycle, and given where he goes, it's very intense. And I think it's a testament to the writing of this series that you can care so much about these characters and still feel like there's a lot more room for them to become fuller than they are now. And that's a fantastic thing. So we skip forward a few episodes now to episode 18, The Shroud of Darkness, and it opens with a lightsaber fight, of course, which is fantastic.
I'm never going to complain about that.
I know, right? And you see the Inquisitors again with Kanan and Ezra, and again, Kanan and Ezra are not really able to win. There's no way they're going to win. They're just trying to retreat. And but we see a more mature version of both of them this time, because they're working together as a team. Kanan seems to be trusting Ezra a lot more, allowing him to be a full member of it. You know, you see like this moment where he says, "Okay, cross," and then they do this maneuver where they end up fighting the other Inquisitor, which was really neat. And then, you know, Kanan ends up having to save Ezra, not because he made a mistake, but just because he's being overpowered. And that's really what it comes down to. And in that moment, Ezra comes up with the solution that gets them out of the situation by using his sort of animal empathy to get them a ride.
By the way, I gotta say, like, sometimes I feel like, you know, voice actors must get kind of, well, I know they do. I've heard, you know, they get kind of a bad rap, or they get kind of, you know, teased sometimes, like they're not real actors. And I gotta say, like, there's just something. I mean, Freddie Prinze Jr., there's something so awesome and hilarious about, like, when, you know, they're so focused and they're fighting, and Ezra says, you know, like where's Chopper? And he's like, well, he's either ignoring us or he's lost. And Kanan's like, oh, he's not lost. You know, just this like life or death situation, and still like, Chopper. I think, by the way, I think Angela might have mentioned this before too, but I think Dave Filoni at one point said if R2-D2 is like the dog, Chopper's the cat.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and that's
totally.
Yeah. Absolutely. Every time I see him, it's like, yes.
What can I throw off the counter now?
Yeah. Oh man.
What do you mean the hyperdrive wasn't top priority?
Man.
Chopper's fantastic. And so we see that they manage their way out. And there's, you know, so we get to see a lot more of this growth between them this season, where they're evolving as characters, they're evolving as a master and Padawan pair. And then you kind of realize, I think later in this episode, we realize that Kanan's never had the official title of anything Jedi bestowed on him. Right. And so that was that's a really cool moment to kind of realize that they don't have he doesn't have that official title for him yet, but he's still responsible for all of these things. Then we find when they get back to the ship, we find Ahsoka. Ahsoka's met them because they figured that they need some kind of help trying to get this set up, trying to find a base for the rebels somewhere, anywhere. And Ahsoka is watching one of Anakin's holo instruction videos when Ezra finds her, and I thought that was fantastic. That was just such a cool moment.
Well, and like the animation too. It's interesting because the animation's different. But oh my gosh, I just lost his name. Who does the voice for Anakin? Oh my gosh. Angela would know.
Crap. Yeah, I should know these two, actually.
It's Matt, Lanter? I'm going to make a fool of myself.
I am not sure. You got to look it up now.
Google. Yes, Matt Lanter. Okay. That was close. But, to have him doing the voice, it's there's that familiarity and everything, which is cool, that continuity. But yeah, he looks a little different, that it somehow just, I don't know, it kind of made this scene, I think, with him, like it's familiar, but it's also kind of new a little bit too.
Right.
And it also, I wonder, because you figure at this point, I mean, Ahsoka hasn't seen Anakin, right? Like, except in these videos and stuff. It's kind of interesting to think about. Like, she hasn't seen him in 15 years ish.
Yeah, it's been a long while.
And he's been up to a lot.
Yeah,
in that time. Yeah, so he's certainly changed. So that, I don't know if that's a connection too.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's cool that Ezra, mentions that he learns from these videos as well.
Right.
So you kind of get a sense of like how far-reaching Anakin's influence was, and how he really was, the best Jedi during the time he was a Jedi. And because usually you see Anakin being the Padawan himself, or just being a master to Ahsoka, but seeing it reach someone like Ezra was pretty cool to see and hear.
Well, and I don't know if you guys know that he's talking about one of the forms of lightsaber combat when he in the holocron.
Yeah.
And it was really neat because he wasn't talking about like, this is how you do this particular form. He's like, I've made some changes to this form so that you can better fight droids. I'm like,
of course he did.
What? So these are like, thousands of years old codified ways of fighting with a lightsaber. And he's like, I've made some changes to this.
Just like he did with her lightsabers.
Exactly. And that's well, and the interesting thing is because the when you get really deep into some of this stuff, you know that Ahsoka's preferred combat form is the fourth form, which is what he's talking about. And that's not however Anakin's preferred form. Anakin's preferred form is the fifth form. And so when he's saying I've made changes to help you fight the droids, he's saying it specifically to Ahsoka, like, look, I went and learned your form and then I made it better for you. So it's very Anakin, like, just prodigy in all ways. And then also, kind of smug about it, but not really like trying to be.
Right.
But, I thought that was a nice little throwback to put in at the beginning there. And then I was really intrigued because they come to her with a problem. They present to her the issue that they're having. And she says, well, whenever Master Anakin and I would have a problem like this, we would take it to Master Obi-Wan or to Master Yoda. And I was, on the one hand, I understand where they're coming from because these are recognized names where Ahsoka's not yet. But I was kind of sad that she wasn't going to be the Master Yoda or Master Obi-Wan in this case, because in my mind, she's kind of attained that position by virtue of who she is and what she's been through. But they decide that they're going to go and consult with Master Yoda because it's happened before. And unbeknownst to her, Kanan has a way of getting in touch with Master Yoda. Not on purpose, but he's managed it before, right?
Right.
So that's what they're going to go do. And Kanan takes them to the temple. And then I love that moment where Ezra offers for her and Kanan to step forward and summon the temple. And she's like, I'm not a Jedi. She's just like steps aside and says, no, I'm not a Jedi. And you get that sense again of like, she really has not, she has no problem with them being Jedi. She has no problem with the Jedi Order in concept, but she herself is not a Jedi and she won't accept that role. And I thought that was a really interesting, another interesting view of that perspective that we had of them.
Yeah.
And then so Kanan and Ezra step forward and they start summoning the temple, and the door just kind of keeps going. Like the temple, as it's unscrewing from the ground, comes up, and the door that Ezra's expecting just keeps on going. And nobody's surprised, but Ezra's like, wait a minute, where's the door going? And Kanan's still there. They're focusing, and then it pops open. And I love the line that Kanan gives before they go in, where he says, "New problem, new door." And that's just like okay, I that's good. I can jive with that. And as they enter, we find out that they all have sort of a different way that they're thinking about approaching the temple. Now I have to ask at this point: have either of you guys seen the Jedi Challenges show? That's on YouTube.
I was watching highlights of it earlier today, and it looks totally awesome.
The new show? Are you talking about
the new show? Yeah.
I watched. I watched like the first 10 minutes of it, but I haven't finished the first episode yet. But yeah, it looks great.
I don't want to ruin it for anyone because we didn't say we were going to watch it for this episode, and I don't want to ruin it for you guys. But I have to say, barring the fact that they're technically wrong in which direction they're going, like by the end, the kids are Jedi Knights, which technically they should be going from youngling to Padawan, but whatever. Yeah, we'll just let it slide.
It's an accelerated program.
Right, exactly. But besides that, I think it's the way that they go about approaching the concept of the challenges of the Jedi is spot on. It is absolutely amazing. And the last part of the challenges, they're in the Jedi Temple, and they handle that in the game show. They handle that so very well. It is really just a very, very well done job of handling that situation and all of the things that you would expect. And so coming off of watching that this week with my kids and then watching this Jedi Temple episode of Rebels was really cool because it really kind of made it fit very well to what was going together. And so we see the typical thing in the temple is like with Luke when he's in the temple on Dagobah, he's confronted with something dark that he has to overcome. And so all three of our characters go into a meditative state to try and contact Master Yoda. And Kanan's the first who gets a result, and a door opens for him, and then he stands up and says that the door's open, and he walks into the door and just disappears. And Ezra's surprised by it, and Ahsoka's like, completely nonplussed by the whole thing. And Kanan is in a training room.
And I loved his line, by the way. Ezra's like, be careful. He's like, don't worry, I wouldn't do anything you would do.
Right. Which is like, that's spot on. Right, so we find Kanan is in a training room faced with a temple guard, and he kind of lays it out for us what this is. And the temple guard has a yellow lightsaber, which is awesome. And they end up battling, even though the first line out of the temple guard's mouth is, "You can't fight. You won't win." That's what he just tells them, like straight up front. You can't fight the Sith Lord. You won't win. And so they have to find another way, which then ties into Ezra, who's the second one. He gets his vision and he manages to talk to Master Yoda, and completely glossed over this line in the episode. But Master Yoda says to him, as they're talking back and forth, Master Yoda says, where did I put it? It's we don't. Ezra asks him, "How do we win?" And Master Yoda pauses for a minute and says, "It's how do we choose to win?" And I thought that was such a great line, because there are so often times in our lives where we find ourselves up against insurmountable odds, and we get so focused on that one way to win,
right,
that we forget that sometimes we have to choose what our win conditions are, rather than saying, "No, I'm going to completely destroy my enemy and be done with them." And but it doesn't really come up the rest in the episode. It doesn't really come up more, but which I think we see as it goes along. They have to kind of figure out another way to do things.
And Ezra doesn't, and I don't think Ezra caught that message either, because even by the end of it, he's like, "We're gonna fight. Like, just tell me, just give me any wisdom, any knowledge that you have to help me." And he leaves them with Malachor, and he has no idea what it is, but he's like, "Okay, that's all I need to know. That's who we're gonna fight, or where we're gonna fight.
That's what we're gonna do." And so it's
Well, he doesn't even know that it's a place, not a person. He's like, "Okay, who's this Malachor guy?"
Yeah.
Right.
Like, well, okay, well, let me at him.
Well, it's that same line where when Luke first meets Yoda and he says, "I'm looking for the great warrior, Master Yoda," and Yoda says, "Wars not make one great," like that's. And you really see like a different side of Yoda here. And I think, Ahsoka talks about it a little bit, where she's talking about the fact that she knew Yoda when he was young, and that he was a lot more happy. Well, not young, but she knew Yoda when she was young.
38 years old. No, yes.
she knew Yoda when she was young, and he was much more happy. But as the war went along, he started realizing that something was going to change, like something big was going to change, and that affected him. And I thought that was, you see that, I rewatched the Revenge of the Sith recently, and you see that in him too, where he's kind of at first he's trying to fight the end of the era, and then once he finally confronts Palpatine, he realizes he can't win, so he has to retreat, he has to back out, and so that was really interesting. And we see also Ahsoka's vision, which is of Anakin.
That was a brief moment, but pretty. I think probably the most powerful in the episode.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's one of those things where it's like watching Rebels again after having watched the end of the Clone Wars. It gives so much more impact to that scene, and you really see, Dave Filoni. You see that he had this stuff planned out, right? You see that he had a clear vision of where all these things were gonna happen. But man, that was intense. That was an intense scene to watch. And yeah, just watching like him convert into, like, she knows, and this is the point where you see she knows what's going on. She just doesn't want to admit that she knows what's going on.
Yeah, it's like earlier in the episode when she's watching the holocron, she tells Ezra, "Oh yeah, we don't know what happened to him. He went, last we heard of him, he went to save the Chancellor." And she doesn't tell him that he's Darth Vader now, and the new leader of the Empire. So yeah, it kind of confirms, like you said, that she knows, deep down.
Well, I think she's still trying to hold out hope, but at the same time, she's she sees what happened. But then it's interesting the way that the darkness in her that she has to confront is feeling like she failed him, and that's a really interesting, she was his apprentice, not the other way around. So her feeling like she failed him is a very interesting situation to have. And meanwhile, while all of this is happening, the Inquisitors land outside, which how are they following these guys around so well? That's the thing I want to know. Like, everywhere they go, the Inquisitors seem to show up, and but they are very cool characters.
I was gonna say, it must be nice to only have one thing to do in your job,
right? That's very true. I will take that too. It's almost like going to retrieve the kids was like annoying because it was like an extra thing,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But no, that is true. Like, you can approach it with the single-minded focus of, we've got to take these guys out. But it's interesting too here, because this is we learned, like, when we first watched the first couple of episodes of Rebels, as we were talking about Ahsoka, we got the hint that there was some other reason that they were interested in Lothal, that the Empire was interested in Lothal. And now we know what the Empire was interested in Lothal for, because they knew that there was a Jedi temple here and they were trying to find it. And this is the point at which they find it. And it's all because, Ezra and Kanan needed some information. And the only person that they could think to get it from was Master Yoda. And so that's their next step. And all of the visions resolve with Ezra getting the piece of information from Master Yoda about where they need to go, even though he doesn't know. So he gets the information about Malachor. Kanan's moment is fantastic when he finally gives up fighting, which I thought it was brilliant too in there, that the lightsaber he pulls off the wall was red bladed, so he gets stuck fighting the guards and pulls a red lightsaber off the wall to have to fight. And in the midst of all that, you have Master Yoda talking about the Jedi becoming more fearful and angry over the course of the Clone Wars. And he drops that other line in there that's, you didn't know I would be afraid. Yeah, but I didn't let it turn into anger. And that's the issue. It's okay to be afraid, but you have to realize that you're starting down that path and stop the anger and make sure that you confront the fear before it can turn into the anger. And
do you guys remember whether or not you knew who he was when you first saw it? Because I don't remember that I did.
I did. When I first watched it, I didn't know who it was. Yeah.
Yeah, the temple guard.
Yeah, but that opens up a million questions too, because I'm just like scratching my head, like,
right,
where was he in the whole thing? The Clone Wars, and like did Anakin not? I guess didn't kill him in the temple. Like, he shows up, he starts killing younglings, and the temple guard's like, yeah, I'm into this.
That's good.
And how but he's not. I'm still confused. I want to kind of dig in more, because this brought up a lot more of my, like, I want to find out more about, like, these Inquisitors with, like, they're not quite, they're not Sith lords like we established on the show that Vader's his own thing, he's his own category, but how's that work? To be a lackey.
Right. I'm guessing some of them were like Kanan, though, where they were either Padawans or they were low-level Jedi that weren't, when confronted with an obvious master, were not going to give up their life. And out of that fear, just said, fine, I'm on your side. Tell me what to do.
It kind of makes me it sort of deepens my disappointment in many ways with the whole other topic, but with the Knights of Ren. Because here you have like basically the exact same setup, but then these dudes just have a bunch of stuff it looks like they got from a junkyard to like swing around at people. I'm like, where are your lightsabers? Especially, it's hinted very heavily.
Why do you not have weed whackers?
Right. It's like, it's hinted very heavily that they are some of Luke's old students. Like he basically says as much. But anyway, that's a whole other. It's like they could have been so much cooler.
Yeah. But that, and I think that's one of the things that I think is really interesting here, that it opens up the text of what is now canon, to say that there were these other Force users that were obviously old enough to be Jedi or Padawan during Clone Wars, and somehow they joined the dark side rather than succumbing to Order 66.
Right.
And what does that look like? You're right. Like, did Anakin walk in to kill the younglings and someone was like, okay, I'm fine with that. Sure. No problem. Makes sense to me. I hated those guys anyway. Right? Like, but at some level, you must have had people that saw what was coming and kind of knew, oh, this is a more powerful way. And so it makes you wonder how many Jedi were already teetering on the brink between the where they were as Jedi and the dark side of the Force. And then you kind of attach that to what Yoda was saying about all of the Jedi were becoming more fearful. And it makes for this sort of interesting dialogue when you watch all of them, when they became so warlike. And that was Ahsoka's big problem throughout the Clone Wars, right? Was like, I've been sworn to be a keeper of the peace, and all I've done my whole career is fight.
Right.
That doesn't really jive with what I'm thinking I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And so that, and I think that's kind of the resolution of this whole thing, is it's like bringing back that question of what it means to be a Jedi. And I really like that you feel almost like after 800 years, Yoda has matured past the strict black and white of the emotions, and that he's moving into this realm where it's okay to start down that path as long as you realize that you've started down that path and you stop and come back.
Right.
That's one of the things I love about Star Wars, is that you can like really you can just watch it for the cool lightsaber fights.
Yeah, you can go.
But it's really cool when you go in deep for the philosophy of it and start really digging into, what does it mean to be an emotionless person, and how none of us are really capable of that. So what do we do when we're not capable of that? How do we deal with the consequences of our incapacity to be completely emotionless and machine-like? So the culmination, I think, of Kanan's was that moment where he is knighted a Jedi, and you realize, oh yeah, he never officially got that, did he? And so he puts down his lightsaber, and the temple guard, rather than striking him down, knights him a Jedi, proclaims him an actual Jedi Knight, and then reveals that he is the Inquisitor from the first season. And yeah, it opens up more questions, but it's really cool too, because now Kanan has kind of embraced his destiny and is becoming who he's supposed to be.
Have we ever seen one of these knighting ceremonies before? We've heard about them, but I thought it was almost kind of funny that it's like, I dubbed he was awfully close with that thing.
I know, right?
Like the rehearsal, like, in better days, I'm sure they probably had a lot of rehearsal. It's like, make sure you stay still.
I know that one of the things that they've mentioned and then retconned and then it's kind back and forth is like that whole rat tail thing that Anakin had in Clone Wars, that gets cut off and handed to the Padawan as a marker. So they depending on which version of it you read, they either have to come before the council or they have to come before a master, and the master actually cuts that thing off which doesn't work obviously for some of them because they don't have hair. So some of them can't do that. But the lightsaber, they do a knighting ceremony, essentially the same way that they would for anything else, like in our tradition, in our historical tradition of knighting. It's in a few of the books and a few of the comics. It's come up.
Okay.
So if you dig around enough, you'll find it. But I think mostly it's in Legends. I don't know that we have any canon version of it right now.
I'm not aware of any. Yeah, I don't know.
Me either. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, ultimately, this is a vision, right? It's not like, Kanan, like, he shouldn't have feared for his life. I don't think he end up dying in one of these things, right? This is all conjured up by Master Yoda. So I think rules like that don't really need to apply. I think he could have been very... he could have wielded that lightsaber however he wanted. And, I think Yoda had implemented all the rules in there.
Well, and I'm assuming this is the purest form of a Jedi knighting that we're going to ever get, because it is a vision, so it's like, it's the temple itself is kind of providing this knighting up for him. So it's all of the knightings that he's ever seen kind of distilled into the actual truth of the matter. And I know that for me, I've talked before about the RPG, the tabletop RPG that I put together for playing Jedi characters. And one of the things that they had to do is they had to complete destinies. So they had to, realize a destiny, and that would move them further along either the light path or the dark path. And it's really cool to like throw in these moments where, like this, where Kanan has completed a destiny. Now he realizes that what he has to do is train Ezra, not by holding on to him and protecting him, but by letting him fulfill his own destiny as well. And so, he can't protect Ezra the way that he wanted to be protected when he was a kid during Clone Wars. He has to let things happen, and that's part of growing up, which also kind of reflects back on him. So it's this whole secular thing that's really awesome for his character development as he grows, but then also to realize that it has, almost a sacramental effect on him, where he not just is just realizing these things, but there's actually a representation of that inside of the advancement of being a Jedi and becoming a Jedi Knight. He's lost that attachment and become bigger for it. And that's really, like a cool kind of Catholic take on the whole situation there too. All right, so then we see that the Inquisitors are opening the temple. They managed to start the temple opening, which I think is really cool, with all the red light that comes out of it instead of the blue light when the Jedi were doing it. And the members of the Ghost have to escape, and so they end up running away and leaving the area. And we're left at the end of the episode with Vader appearing at the temple after there's a weird kind of semi-lightsaber battle between the Inquisitors and the Temple Guard, just to keep them from catching up to all of the crew.
By the way, just a real quick kind of, Lucas, John Williams world kind of leap here. Did anyone else just get a total I just lost the name of it. When Ahsoka's leaving the temple and she stops and looks back and Yoda's there and he just waves and the temple's coming down. It was totally Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
When Sean Connery looks back and the Crusader just waves and he goes, I was just I kept waiting for that song to play, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, that was kind of fun. I don't know if they meant to do that or not, but that was totally, I made that note right away.
There's so many throwbacks in this thing. It's so great. Like the 3 Minute a Baby thing, right? Where it's just they had to know that that's what they were doing.
Yeah, the Yoda appearing quickly to Ahsoka was a cool moment too, because it's like Yoda is still acknowledging her, even though she's quote unquote left the Jedi Order. Yeah. So it's kind of like a wink and a nod, like, hey,
I know you say anything. Yeah.
You're. I'm around. You'll be looking for me some more.
It's not that I wasn't talking to you. I just needed to talk to Ezra.
Yeah.
Just really needed to talk to him. And so we see that the temple is now being taken over by the Sith as Vader steps in and says that his master will be very proud of the Inquisitors and what they've found. And that's kind of where we end off this episode. And with the question of now knowing that Malachor isn't a person that they're looking for, but a place. And that's likely where we will be going next with our foray into looking into Rebels. So Any final thoughts on these 2 episodes from you guys?
Well, just going off what you said, I think I really do love these episodes, but I'm anticipating so much those 2 coming up, because that is, I think, what we do have next up, and I've seen them before, and I have not seen them since the end of Clone Wars.
Yeah,
I've been
we keep purposely avoiding watching them until we are going to get into them.
Yep, and it's totally, that's going to be really interesting, I think, to see in that context.
Yeah, it's an intense 2 episodes, so I think I'm looking forward to them. But
yeah.
So I think these 2 really start to propel the future of what is going to become the Jedi Order. So, there is a future for these things to become a Jedi Order. And now, Kanan and Ezra are kind of having to restart it. And there's a future for the Jedi, but we still don't really know what exactly that's going to look like. And I'm interested to see, I know that Rebels doesn't exactly cover it, but I'm interested to see in some extended fiction somewhere how Kanan and Ezra aren't involved with Luke by the end of the whole thing, because that's got to be because we don't get a finality to Kanan and Ezra's story. We get a closure of Rebels, like the story of Rebels closes, but it doesn't leave them, dead and gone, so that they can't be part of what Luke becomes. But it's Luke's school by the time we get into the New Order era of things. So I'm interested to see where all that kind of falls out.
Well, the rumor mill, of course, is running crazy with all these, potential things that they could do, which, and I mean, I'd be totally game. I think they've really set themselves up for it in one way, shape, or form, with, again, no spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but just, where this is this kind of cliffhanger ending of Rebels right about the time of the end of, the original trilogy. And then, like a 4 or 5 year jump up to the Mandalorian. So, by the time we get into Mandalorian season 2, it's totally feasible, to pull in some of these paths, to see like where are these people, outside the Skywalker saga. So I hope they do it. I'll be excited to see it.
I think it'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could probably bet on that. And if it's not in the Mandalorian, I know with the success of Mandalorian, they've got a whole bunch of shows in development, and they can go all sorts of ways. And yeah, I know they're going to visit a lot of new characters, but I'm sure they're going to pull a lot of these characters from the animated series to live action. Yeah, to continue their stories. Like we already know Ahsoka is going to be in Mandalorian season 2. Well, I don't know if it's been 100% confirmed yet, but I think no one's denying it. But yeah, I know, right? But yeah, it's safe to say at least we're going to get some more development on her story, because her character as well doesn't really have a closure to it by the end of Rebels. So yeah, we'll see what happens. It is exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think the climate that we're in right now, where there's still a lot of questions about movie theaters reopening and big, movie productions being a big deal, I think we're going to see a lot more kind of development and movement into this smaller screen format, quote unquote, because it's so affordable to do the special effects now. And then, like with the way the Mandalorian was shot, which if you haven't watched the Star Wars gallery yet,
it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's just incredible to see how they've done it and the advances they've been able to make that are really going to have effect on everything,
including film, including cinema stuff,
including major motion productions. Yeah, you just won't be able to avoid using it. It's so amazing. Which has always been the Skywalker, the Skywalker way, right? The industrial lights and magic kind of concept of like pushing everything way out ahead of where it should be. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where Disney's able to take this now that they've got Disney Plus under their belt, now that they've got the success of The Mandalorian under their belt, knowing that the MCU is such a huge hit, and all of the other things that they have coming from that, and like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. being able to tie in with the big movies and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And fun new development. Not a huge fan of coronavirus generally, but I think that this might be a good move for entertainment right now.
Well, even before the pandemic, there was I think Kathleen Kennedy was saying after The Rise of Skywalker came out that they were going to take a break from doing the blockbuster big screen Star Wars films and concentrate more on the Disney Plus streaming platform and TV shows. So I think, now they can just double down on that with, like you said, the climate that we're in.
What's so funny too is like we've since 2015. You know, again, I love Star Wars. That's why I'm on this show. But since 2015, we've almost had twice as many Star Wars movies come out as did from 1977 to 1983. And it's just bizarre because, like, when she says they're going to take a break, I'm laughing because I'm like, for like 2 years, right? Because, like, you know, Taika Waititi's, you know, movie that he's which I'm excited about, whatever they have him doing.
Sure.
But it is funny. It's like, even if they do only wait like 2 years or even 3, it is just hilarious. It's like, wow, you can, I mean, in this climate, like, you can do so much in that amount of time that none of us will, you know, be missing anything. I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's so much to catch up on. There's so many books to read and comic books to read. And, you know, and with this concept of the High Republic coming out, you know, it's been delayed, but it's still coming out. So there's so much depth to kind of broaden out the Star Wars community and the Star Wars lore, which is really good. I think it's fantastic. I love it. I'm happy to be part of it. Right?
Oh yeah.
We're going to end it there. I'll say that's it from us. What do you think of these episodes of Star Wars Rebels? Be sure to email us or comment on our Facebook or Twitter page and let us know. You can email us any feedback at starwars@sqpn.com and find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars, including James S., Kathy S., Brooke K., Joel L., and Pamela F. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Also, be sure to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or on the SQPN YouTube channel. To find previous episodes of Secrets of Star Wars, please visit sqpn.com/Star Wars. And next time, we'll be following the story of Ahsoka in episodes 21 and 22 of Season 2 of Rebels. So that's the culmination. They're called the Twilight of the Apprentice. It's a combo episode. And it's an ominous name for a very impactful couple of episodes. So be sure to join us for that discussion. Until then, Andrew Hermus, thank you for joining me.
It's been a pleasure.
And Mike Creevy, thank you as well.
Oh, pleasure as always.
And once again, I'm Thomas Enherho. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.